Greetings, and welcome. Welcome, everyone. I am Zakia Sankara Jabbar. I serve as the Director of Education Policy here at the Wayfinder Foundation. I am also the co founder and co executive director for Racial Justice Now. Here at Wayfinder, we work on a variety of different issues, particularly centering women, Black women, and other women of color in our roles in our communities fighting for justice with an explicit lens through race. And so for us, we unapologetically center women and we center race in the work that we're doing in educational and criminal justice. And so I'm excited to be on the team here. And of course, Racial Justice Now as well is a community-based organization that is based in several states across the country, with our founding being in Dayton, Ohio, back in 2011, and then recently expanded in 2019 to the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, the National Capital Region, where we work primarily in Montgomery County, suburban Washington, DC. And so that's a little bit about me today. I am, very much a leadership development guru of young people and parents in this work. And I'm also an advocate, a very strong advocate for Black children and families at the local, state, and the federal level. So enough about me, y'all, because I have assembled what I believe is an amazing panel of experts here to just talk about the 70 years since Brown, right? May 17th, 70 years ago, we had that landmark pivotal decision, which changed a lot of how we as African Americans and others now interact in this country, particularly around education and so-called integration of schools. We're going to get into that. And also in general with public accommodations. So I just want to make sure that we frame that conversation that way, because what we're going to do here today is sort of a three-pronged approach. We want to do a deep reflection of 70 years, right? And talk about sort of who were the players at that time, how did that strategy become the strategy, and how did we get to the Supreme Court? And then finally, I think is also very important, we want to also lift up those other voices at the time in our community, right? Other voices of people who actually did not agree with the Brown approach. So having said that, I am now going to kick it to each one of the panelists here so that they may be able to introduce themselves. And now I will go ahead and kick it to Dr. Brian Morrison, and please introduce yourself to our audience. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Zakia. I really appreciate this opportunity to share some of my insights on my research and my work in education, to try to add some flavor and to contextualize somewhat of what happened in Baltimore with Brown. Um, uh, I'm Dr. Brian C. Morrison. I like to consider myself or refer to myself as a public school educator of almost 40 years now. I taught in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, New York City, Prince George's County, and I'm currently a teacher leader of innovation and social studies at Ballou Senior High School in the District of Columbia public school system. But as far as my community work goes, I'm the founder and president of the William J. Watkins Senior Educational Institute, centered in Baltimore, Maryland. And we're named after William J. Watkins because he was during the 1800s the preeminent African American educator in Baltimore City at that time. And many people don't think about education for Black people during slavery in a slave city in a slave state. But it was a very vibrant educational community ecosystem going on at that time. So we're named after him, and our work centers around culturally responsive practices, culturally responsive pedagogy, and ensuring that all students, especially those in underserved and under-resourced communities, receive the best education possible. So it's just a little bit about myself.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So now we'll kick it to Dr. Angie Barfield. Please introduce yourself and we'll get into the conversation shortly after. Just
Well,
introduce
good
yourself now.
well, good morning from California. I know it's afternoon on the West Coast. On the East Coast, but hello everyone. My name is Dr. Angie Barfield, and I'm coming here representing over 300,000 Black children in the state of California. I serve as co-founder and executive director of Black Students of California United, which is a nonprofit organization that is student-led and was designed and developed to cultivate and educate Black children about who they are, to give them back their cultural identity, and also to cultivate them into leadership, to stand toe to toe in their school districts and in their communities to demand what is rightfully theirs as Black children, and also to help reconstruct the educational system and change, flip that paradigm to understand that the excellence that we have had and what we inherently possess as Black people belongs to them, and also to ensure that their learning spaces are healthy and safe. So I am so happy to be here, grateful to be invited, and also to represent, as I said, over 300,000 Black children in the state of California that are ready to change the narrative in learning and to move the needle for the community. So thank you for letting me be here. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Next, Dr. Akua, please introduce yourself. You're not new to this audience. They know you.
Peace and blessings, Zakia, and esteemed panel members and everyone that's viewing. My name is Dr. Chika Akua. I'm an associate professor of educational leadership at Clark Atlanta University. But in addition to that work, I've been in education for over 30 years. I've served as a middle school language arts and reading teacher and a reading specialist for a number of years. In addition to that, I create African-centered and culturally relevant instructional strategies to increase Black student success. And I'm the CEO of an educational technology company called Reading Revolution Online. So it's great to be here with you all.
Excellent. And finally, last but certainly not least, Afia Matsumoyo, please introduce yourself to the audience. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. Afia here. Very happy to be here. Thanks for the invite, Mama Zakia. I am co-founder and co-director of Aya Educational Institute. We're about 26 years old.
Wow.
As an institution, we have a full-day school, actually, and graduating 7 students this year with a diploma from Aya, sending them out into the world. And by African-centered, we actually mean, in the way that Amos Wilson said it, that we are preparing them to solve our problems, to
That's
work
right.
in our interest first. Ashe. And I was very interested in the topic because I'm one of those special people who integrated a school
That's
back in
right. That's why
19.
we wanted you here.
Yeah, that year. Yeah, so very excited to be here. I'm very happy that for me at Aya, we're able to bring back actually some of the spirit of education that we had prior to that
Right.
time, that integrative time. So thanks
That's
again for the invite, Zakia.
Hey, listen, we're going to get right into it. I am excited that you all are here again. It was really important to me to put together this panel of experts because each of you have a special role in the overall ecosystem, particularly for Black education and for Black children, students and families in our community. So I have deep love and respect for each and every one of you. So thanks so much again for offering your time and to being here today to help provide this very much needed reflection. And so just, this is the first question, you guys can kind of do it, popcorn style, but let's just start out with the beginning, right? Like, so we know we come from a community of strategists, leaders who have been working very hard, right, to access world-class education, to just access everything that we need and deserve, just based on our own humanity, ever since our sojourn in this country, right? We understand that. I would really love, Dr. Kua, perhaps if we could start with you, just a quick reflection, right, of who were the strategists, right, around Brown, And why do you think this particular strategy, if you will, why do you think that this one was the most acceptable, if you will, during that time period that led up to the Supreme Court making this decision? You're on mute, Baba. Unmute. Yep.
Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton Houston, James Neighbor, these were some of the legal minds that crafted the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision. I think it's very important that we go back to something that Asa Hilliard talks about in his book, Saba, The Reawakening of the African Mind, that when we use the term integration, a lot of people think that the 1954 decision was to integrate the schools. And it was not. It was to desegregate the schools. And he shows us that there's a difference between those two terms. When you look at what Black people were talking about at that time, because there were savage inequalities, there were criminal inequities in terms of how schools were being funded. And there was a common thinking that, well, if we are in the same schools, then maybe we'll have access to the same opportunities that whites are keeping to themselves and keeping away from us. But so the primary idea was desegregation. It was desegregating the schools and opening up opportunities so that wherever a person wanted to go to school, that they could. What ended up happening is the change in language from desegregation to integration led to the disintegration of Black schools. And that was not the intention of Black leaders who were fighting for the Brown decision. It was to keep Black schools intact, to get them equitably funded.
Right.
But at the same time, there was this disintegration of Black schools and the Black teacher and leader workforce that still has devastating effects for us today.
Can you unpack those terms really quickly, disintegration and the other two? Just unpack those terms. I don't want to assume the audience completely understand what that means.
Sure. So
thank you.
So desegregation means that you would be able to go to school wherever you wanted to. So there were some Black families that were upset because they would have to send their child way across town away from to the Black school when there was another school that may have been across the street or right around the corner. Okay. And then in a lot of cases, the Black schools were underfunded with dilapidated physical space and textbooks and different things of that nature. And so the thinking was that we should be able to go to school wherever we want. We didn't want to do away with our Black schools, though, in the same way that we have HBCUs today, of which I'm a professor at one. But, you know, I did my doctorate at Georgia State University, did my undergrad at Hampton and so forth. So the idea was that we should be able to go to school wherever we want, but that our Black schools would normalize Black excellence and would be a safe haven for Black students. So desegregation just means we should be able to go to school wherever we want. Integration means to have an influx of Black students or all kinds of students in one particular school, okay? And that's where I say, and where Hilliard says that the language was changed from desegregation to integration. Well, originally Black people were not interested in integration. We were interested in equal access. And that's the critical difference. And so when the language changed from desegregation to integration, that led to the disintegration of Black schools, because as Leslie Fenwick talks about in her book, Jim Crow's Pink Slip, it led to over 100,000 Black principals and teachers being displaced, demoted, or out and out fired. And I want you to think about that for just a moment, that number, over 100,000. Most of your NFL football stadiums don't hold 100,000 people. So if you can imagine the largest one, whatever it is, a stadium full of people, imagine that's the number of people that we lost. And then you look at the cascading effect that's had over the generations without our children having access to models of intellectual authority or leadership authority in our schools and being in these culturally isolated spaces and subject to white terrorism. So hopefully that gives some
Yes, thank you. That because that's going to be really, pivotal as a part of the conversation, because certainly we have entire generations that don't know the history of Brown, right? This is very new to some in our audience. Mama Afia, I feel like it's very pivotal now to just kind of steer towards you, because as you mentioned in your introduction, you were actually directly impacted by this decision as a child, right? In the state of Alabama. Please, share your perspective on the question in terms of, you know, what did that look like for your family, right? What were Black folks in Lowndes County, Alabama, right? What were they saying? Were they in agreement with this approach, or were they in agreement with the more Black nationalist approach? Is that wait a minute, we just need the resources. We don't necessarily want to go to y'all schools.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
expand, yeah.
I hear you, Mama Zakia. As Baba Chica said, um, it started out exactly like he said. You know, people are paying taxes, and we're getting books that we can barely use because we're getting them like secondhand, third hand from the white children, and they pretty much destroyed them. So you got maybe some rain coming into the building. They may be a little bit dilapidated. And I think part of what happened, I think if Brown, Brown happened in 54, but the folks started working on it in as early as the 30s. So you got this long span, and because it takes so long in the course, I think that if it had started like in the 50s, it would have looked a whole lot different. So I think of it like Baba before said, Asa Hilliard, we were fighting for the equity, right? Like give us what our tax money should be paying for, and we didn't get that. They gave us an opportunity to go and integrate this white school, and I think for a lot of folk that I was around, we were kind of caught up in it. It seemed like the natural next step, and so there was a lot going on. I had my father arguing with my great aunt, and I think one of them or two of them cussed each other out around our Black children smart enough to go to school with white children. And that's some of what it got down to, which would just give my father like, it would get him like hell yeah, absolutely. So you had that part, and my great aunt was set on like, you shouldn't be doing this because that's radical. You should just keep them at this school. So it got to that. And at at the same time, the thing that determined whether or not you would go to the white school or not, and there were only a few of us, had to do with whether or not you owned your own property, because white people at the time would threaten and say, if you think your kids are good enough to go to school with ours, then you have to go somewhere else to rent. You're going to be without housing. Or if you worked for a white person, then you were going to lose that job. So I had some dear friends whose parents were domestics, and so it was no way. So it was only a few of us. So, with that kind of framing, Black people got even more, I would say, like motivated, like we're going to make this happen for the bravest ones of us. There were threats from the Klan to my father. So I'm saying this to say, like, so we were there. Now, ultimately, when I looked at it, Mama Zakin, this is at some deeper levels, right? I think that the reason why we would go for it, right? Because now think about it. I can talk about some of my, the endurance. I mean, it was rough. There was some serious stuff. There was some serious fear. People were beat up. All this, right? The reason we could go for it and not hear a Zora Neale Hurston, right? And I don't know how loudly Zora Neale Hurston was talking, is that there was that little weasel there that said, like, here's an opportunity for us to go and prove that our children are smart enough. And that's some work for us still to do, right? I think that was a weasel that would have my community, who had been thinking very sanely about it before, that was a weasel that would have us sent out to do this proving that we were smart enough, and have my great auntie sit down and not talk so loudly. So hopefully that creates some context. So again, it was a few of us because it was only my parents, fortunately, did own our own home. They had gathered the money from picking cotton after work to have a down payment to hire Black men to build our home. And they also worked as laborers in the neighboring county, not in this county. So there's some context for you.
I appreciate that. Dr. Morrison, you mentioned some things in your introduction as well. I'd be interested in your response to that question. How did Brown, did it impact you personally, but also, in terms of that strategy, what were folks thinking in Baltimore?
The bulk of my research is in Baltimore and Maryland. And what was going on in Baltimore, going back to what Dr. Akua said about desegregation, right? In Baltimore, folks were looking for desegregation. They were looking to remove the barriers that were preventing their children from accessing educational opportunities that would allow their children to learn and thrive. The NAACP and the Afro newspaper, Lily Cowell Jackson and the head of the Afro were really pushing the whole move for desegregating the schools. And what the Black community wanted is just like Dr. Akua said, they wanted to have access to the kinds of education that would help the community thrive and to grow. In Baltimore, so I really have to frame this by going back to the beginning of the public schools, at Black people being admitted to public schools after the end of the Civil War. Because Black people have been struggling even before the Civil War. Baltimore City was one of the first cities to establish a public school system back in the 1830s. And from the 1830s up through the 1860s, through the Civil War, Black people, free Black people in Baltimore, which many people are unaware, during the antebellum era, Baltimore City had the largest population of free Black people in the country. It was like a mecca of Black people. Here's another irony, right? You have a slave state, and you have all these free Black people coming to the slave state. So Black people in Baltimore were trying to get into public education, and they couldn't. So once the Civil War came to an end and they struggled and were able to get into the public school system, it was a segregated system. Now, another aspect to this, prior to public school education, Black folks had a vibrant educational ecosystem. And that's what most of my dissertation deals with. Is I thought I was going to, when I started my work, I thought I was just going to, run real quick through the 1800s and get into the 20th century. But I got stuck in the 1800s because there were so many educational opportunities that Black people had and were creating for themselves. Not that other people were giving them these, but Black people were creating these institutions for themselves so that we could create a reality and create a worldview that was useful for us. And this is really, let me stay on the Brown piece. So we get into the
context matters. You don't have to censor yourself here. Go. Yes.
Okay, so the whole purpose of education that Black people were putting forth, these Black educational institutions, was to create an identity and to create a shared identity and a purpose, which was at that time was for freedom. It was for spiritual freedom and it was for physical freedom. So this is what's pushing us to get schooling and to learn to educate ourselves. Because it goes back to a real essential African-centered idea, and that is of the Utamaruha that Marimba Ani talks about and May the Circle Be Unbroken, that the ethos of Black people is spirituality. So our quest for education was so that we could understand the world through spirit. So we wanted to learn how to read so we could interpret this Christian stuff that they gave to us in a way that was meaningful to us, that could free us and liberate us in that fashion. That was the first purpose of education. And then it goes on, we use that knowledge to free ourselves physically from the essential wrongness of what's going on. So these are the purposes of education. This is what's driving this desire for education amongst Black people in Baltimore. After we get through the Civil War, now that educational push is now for for political access, to access the rights and the privileges that we're supposed to have, again, out of a sense of rightness, right? And this is coming through these, much of this effort is being pushed through our spiritual institutions, right? So we we have this piece going on. So once public schools come into existence and Black people can go to them, they're inherently unequal from the get-go. Initially, what the city does was they take the independent Black institutions and the Black schools that were established by white philanthropists who came to the South to help set them up. They took them and made them the public schools. And those schools had Black teachers, they had integrated faculties, and they were teaching the Black students. So they took them, they fired all the Black teachers, put in all these white teachers, got rid of the other teachers, and created this horrific system that with dilapidated buildings, didn't give them any money. That was just horrible and terrible. So Black folks pushed and struggled to get colored teachers in the colored schools. That was the first thing. We want to get colored teachers in the colored schools, and we want better facilities. This struggle is still going on in Baltimore City today. The struggle for adequate facilities, and
Right.
it went all the way through.
Right.
So finally, by the early 1920s, the early 1900s, all of the Black schools are controlled by Black people. They have Black teachers, they have Black administrators. And in the early 1900s, Baltimore has pretty much, but the Black community has quite a bit of say of what's happening in these Black schools. And these Black schools they're community schools, they're community-based schools. They're taught by teachers who were at the church, who lived down the street, who were in the neighborhood. And then by 1906, 1907, all the Black schools in Baltimore City were taught by Black teachers and had Black administrators. So you have about 40, 50 years of these schools that are growing and developing. And as Dr. Akua said, once Brown comes along, the very first act that the school board did was to dismantle, to get rid of the colored school system. That was the first act. It was literally the first sentence out of their mouth at the board meeting where post Brown. It was the first thing they did was to get rid of that. They had a colored superintendent, they're basically a colored superintendent of the Black schools, a Black person. I'm using this language, colored, because that's the language of the times. But they had their own Black leader, and within those schools, those teachers were practicing culturally responsive pedagogy. They were continuing those same things of developing a shared identity and a shared purpose, which was to be free and to be the best that we could be. And that's what was going on, and that's what was dismantled, and that is what was lost. But what was unique about Baltimore was when Brown came around, and it came into actually 2 years before that, they had pushed and were successful in desegregating the elite Poly High School, and they were able to get initially 15 Black boys to into the school. But again, it was about getting access to that quality education. But the going back to the unique thing was Black folks in Baltimore were perfectly fine with choice, with free choice. It wasn't like we were trying, we're gonna go in here and we're gonna integrate these schools. No, Black folks said, we're fine with the Board of Education's policy. In fact, there was a meeting before the board's policy went into effect with the Urban League, the NAACP, the leader of the Afro newspaper, and they came up with this policy and said, this is Lily Carroll Jackson talks about this, how she was there at the meeting, and they said, these are the plans. We go with this one or this one. And the plan that they came down with was free choice. Wow. And when the following year, when they came up with free choice, between 1% and 3% of Black families sent their children to the white schools, between 1% and 3%, because they were happy. I won't say they were happy and satisfied, completely satisfied, but they were concerned about sending their children into these other spaces and these other places.
Right.
What they said was you can apply to any school. If there's room there, you can go. And most of the black schools were overcrowded, and most of the white schools had open seats. So you could apply to go to those schools, and they would let you in. But only about I think 3% of the elementary school children left and went to white schools, and about 1% of the secondary students, junior high and high school students, families went to the majority white schools. And what has occurred since then? I don't want to go on too long, but
no, that statistic to me says a lot. I actually want to kind of maybe pause you there, because what you're describing, I think, is amazing. And this is a part of the history that we don't hear about. We don't hear enough about how we as a people took control of our own education in certain cities. I'm sure Baltimore wasn't the only place that happened. I'm almost sure of that. And the fact that, like you said, when the Brown decision came down, wasn't nobody running out of black schools to go to school with no white people. They didn't even want to send their kids into that harmful psychological environment. I'll tell you the truth. I completely view that picture of Ruby Bridges differently now than I initially did, because now my thoughts are, what kind of parent would put a child that young into that? That's a lion's den. That's crazy. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's what I think now when I see that, knowing what I know now about the current education system. But I wanted to allow Dr. Barfield, please, to come in and please add any, thoughts to this conversation from your perspective, both as, like you said, someone now working with over 300,000 young people in the state of California, but just your reflections on Brown historically. At this point, we can talk about that, and then we'll get into next steps around the work that you're actually doing currently. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. I mean, how do you come behind Dr. Akua and Mama Afia and Dr. Morrison like that?
I'm sorry.
It's like I'm learning. I'm in class right now. I agree and I appreciate everything that was said. I was blessed to have the honor to hear from Reverend Oliver Brown's youngest daughter, Cheryl Brown Henderson, at a conference recently. And it was amazing the nuggets that she dropped to us as adult Black educators at that time about what truly happened during that time. And what I walked away with from her was, this country still owes us on that promise. That for some reason, they have bamboozled and brainwashed our communities to believe that we have the best. And it's just not true. And I see that in the work that I do with Black children and Black and Brown children to that nature. I appreciate, Dr. Akua is one of my mentors, and it was because of him seeing the brilliance in me that really pushed me to get my doctorate degree from an HBCU, where they spoke to me and built me up and gave me permission to be my brilliant self, right? Also, Mama Afia and Baba Wakesa, them giving me permission to heal myself from the harm that I didn't know I was taking in from this system, right? And so until, it's unfortunate that a lot of my generation has to struggle with this reconnection,
right,
to find themselves. But I have taken the personal stance that I will not allow for another generation of Black children to go through this system, because they're in it. There's really not much we can do about it. They're in it, but to dismantle it internally for themselves so that they don't have to carry that, right? Our kids they're a TikTok generation, right? It's like, I got it. And it's like, no, it's time for us to dig deep and learn and know and grow, right? So for me, now, this being the 70th year of Brown, my thing is, America, you owe us on the promise. You owe me and my kids that I serve across this country on that promise. Don't erase, don't redesign. Because I'm going to tell you right now, that stuff in Florida and how those, unfortunately, some of those children are made to just accept the fact that their history is being erased and they're being minimized and devalued. That's not okay.
It's not okay.
And if people think it's only happening in Florida, just know it's not.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
It's everywhere. So, you know, the more our children learn about this case and its history, they will begin to, the bulbs will continue to go off.
Yes.
So that they understand it wasn't just Reverend Brown and that group. There were 5 other cases that were tied into that.
That's so true. Right.
Learn those stories and what that plight was. Right. And then, you know, just in the constant growth, you know, Zakia, what I found out is here in California, even though we hear about Westchester versus the Board of Ed, right, down in LA County, there was a Black man in Visalia, California, wow. Central Valley.
Wow.
He segregated schools in Visalia before Westchester.
Wow.
I think the more we begin to unpack this case, the more I think our community, as long as it embraces understanding this, we can blow this thing up. I know that ain't the right terminology to use in this country right now, blowing anything up, but I think it's important. And, you know, and that really played into my research in the cultural identity restoration practices for Black children.
Yeah.
It's necessary. They
it's
have
to necessary.
Themselves, you know, so it's about education.
I appreciate that. I just want to know, like, the comments are there. I'm coming to you, Mama Fia, just a second. Yeah. The people are enjoying this. I just want y'all to know that we have a solid like group of people watching us right now. They're commenting and just want to acknowledge the audience. Thank you all. I hope you all are getting, you know, out of this as much as I am, because I too am a student here. I think I can go out on a limb and say I'm probably the youngest person here moderating this conversation right now. But because of some of the things that I've heard, here's my next question. And Mama Fia, I'll come to you and start first, because I want you to share the reflection you were about to share. Okay, here we are, right? 70 years yet later, we have 70 years of evidence of, was this the right way to go? Or like, you know, or should we been like those Black folks in Baltimore? Like, how can we scale that? Right? Like, does that energy even still exist? Right? Like when we look at the current numbers of what's happening, particularly with Black children around this country. Like, you know, what, Mama Fia, thoughts? I mean, we're you know,
I just
years later, come on.
Yeah, I wanted to bring a little balance to the Ruby Bridges piece. You know, you said, how could her parents? And part of how I relate to it is it's the same as how did Martin Luther King Jr. let our children face Bull Connor. Okay? Right. That's how I relate to it. Yeah. And I just want to give some honor to a lot of our ancestors now who made those choices for some good reasons, right? And I want to talk a lot about intent. Some of the folk who, like my parents, who made this decision, they were some of the most staunch in the civil rights movement and also the Black Power movement. And remember what year it is. It's 1954. Right. The Montgomery bus boycott hasn't happened yet. That's the next year, right? So I'm saying all this to say the good, the bad, the ugly of it, and it's all there, that folk had our interest in mind. The folk around me, they had our interest in mind. And for how I grew up, I was in the 5th grade, right? Fortunately, I was in the 5th grade. I already had those 4 years of Black teachers and a solid Black community, and I was able to retain that. And those folk were thinking about us. It wasn't like, oh, okay, well, it's okay. Y'all are children, so y'all can endure anything. Also, we were sent out in the interest of our people. And for how I was raised, I wasn't too young. And I've said to people before, because it felt like this way to me, it felt like Martin King Jr. himself asked me to go. And now we understand his own journey, his own growth, right? Did I send my people into a burning house? He
Yeah.
became clear about that later, right? As did I, that's why I can clearly say I think the weasel for us. Even if Zora Neale Hurston had come to my town, and she was clear because she grew up in an all black town, and she absolutely valued what she had in that town. I still think some people would have gone, no, we need to do this because this is part of the movement forward. That was our interest to move forward. It was though, it wasn't to move from our people. It was to move our people and move all of our people. And some of us became clear that this was not it. And though I want to be clear about our intent, and I want to honor the folks who had it, because again, those same folk, when it came to the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, they were leaders. They were absolute leaders. And I absolutely believe, as Nana before Asa Hilliard said, like we were fighting for those books and dilapidated buildings, right? If they fixed that, we would have been happy, and they didn't offer to fix that. I mean, the Supreme Court didn't address that. NAACP maybe lost sight of that, and they offered us integration. And kind of naturally, it's like we're going to go ahead forward, especially when you're egged on like you ain't good enough to go. We did answer correctly to say we are good enough to go, and of course that points to. I always remember I became clear about this. I'm just real quickly, Zakia.
Sure.
When I first met with Kessa, shortly after I met him, he was presenting our S&I line dynamic that you're familiar with. And he made the point that white people have been scripted to see themselves as superior to Black people.
Wow.
And Black people have been scripted to see ourselves as inferior. And I just finished grad school, and he's in this church presenting this. And I was like, oh no, I don't believe that. I stood up to adamantly disagree. I was on the third row. And I was like, oh no, not me. And I made my case. I said, I was the one who integrated a school in the fifth grade, and I proved that I was as intelligent, or maybe even more so. I went to undergrad school, graduated top of my major, and I proved this. I went on to grad school and I proved, and fortunately that day, I heard myself say, I proved. That's it. The whole church heard it. And as the old folks say, you could hear a rat piss on cotton. It was just that quiet for my benefit to hear that day, that if I had known it, I wouldn't have needed to prove it. If
Wow.
my parents had been absolutely clear, I wouldn't have needed to prove it,
That's,
right? And on that day, I decided to get out of the proving it business to white people.
that's right.
And I was clear, much like a person who's beaten up, a spouse who's been abused by a husband for all these years. I went out to prove to them that we were good people, that they were hurting us, that we bleed, that we are worthy, we're intelligent. As a wife, abused wife, physically to her husband might say, or to also make them better, because some of us are about healing them, making them better, right? So they treat us better. I had been unsuccessful. It didn't work. I was clear about that. What this dynamic helped me understand is that I could just leave, that I don't have to participate in that work anymore, proving it. Now, what I was left to do was to heal my own injected depression,
Right.
right? That had me doubt or not absolutely know myself and my own intelligence, my own worth, or as Mama Angie talked about, her own brilliance. That was the work, and that's the work that I set out to do. So again, our people were so well intended, and
Yes.
we were wounded then from oppression as we are wounded now. And thank you for the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you. And for centering that. And certainly, I absolutely agree. I never, meant to say that I believe that parents who were sending their children into that lion's den at that point, not that they had any, harmful intentions, for their children, but they basically were taking one for the team. Right. And I argue now, like, do we even have that same mindset now here in 2024? Do we have that collectivist? This is about us, like let's focus on our people and how we, thrive. Dr. Akua, I wanted to just kind of bring you back to here. I know that you mentioned Dr. Leslie Fenwick, who's done a lot of work around just looking at, just I would say the unfortunate try to say the least controversial thing, sort of collateral consequences, right? And basically the firing of all of these Black brilliant teachers and administrators, right? Like, I know that wasn't the intent, right? Has there been any? So yeah, first of all, thoughts on that, and then like, in terms of, and we can shift the conversation in terms of like, where do we go from here, or where do we go now? But I want you to expand, if you will, Dr. Akua, just so because I don't think that the vast majority of people really understand that this decision economically impacted our community in the worst ways in terms of the amount of brilliance in Black educators and administrators that were lost. You're on mute. Come off mute. Yeah.
Yes. So as I mentioned before, over 100,000 Black principals and teachers, to the tune of over $1 billion in terms of the economic impact over time, right? In addition, taking into thought the fact that it is Black principals and Black teachers who inspire Black children to become teachers and principals. It's seeing that person and admiring what they do and how they do it and the impact that they're having that makes a person want to become a teacher or a leader. But I think one of the things that we have to look at also is what were Black schools to the Black community prior to so-called integration. And I want to kind of build on some of the things Dr. Morrison mentioned earlier. When we go back to who we were prior to coming to this country, prior to being enslaved and so forth, what we find that it was Black people who instituted free public education for males and females in the Nile Valley of Africa. Then in West Africa, in the Empire of Songhai, free public education for males and females. I'm emphasizing males and females because most traditions were only educating the male elite.
That's right. That's right. And African, yes, thank you.
Then when you look at the Moors taking over Spain, one of the first things that they instituted, free public education for males and females, right? So then it becomes very logical that when enslaved Africans are emancipated here in America, what was one of the first things that we fought for? Free public education for males and females. So as Du Bois tells us in his book, Black Reconstruction, he says that public education in the South was a Negro idea. There would not be free public education for males and females of any race in the South were it not for Black people. Because when we gained our freedom, we said all people should have access to free public education. Because remember, the white landowners, they didn't even want poor white folks to be educated. They were like, you don't need to be educated. All we need you to do is keep these niggers in line. That was their thinking. And so white folk, the average white folk didn't have access to public education. But then also I want you to bear this in mind. What was the type of excellence that we were producing in our schools? Back in 2015, you may recall when the movie Hidden Figures came out about the amazing Black female mathematicians. And I took my parents to see that. At the time, they were 82 and 85 years old, and I wanted to hear what they had to say about it. So after the movie, I asked them what they thought, and they said, wow, those Black women were incredible, but they were not exceptional. I said, what do you mean by that? They were incredible, but they were not exceptional. He said, what we mean by that is growing up, all we knew was brilliant Black people in math and science and in every discipline. So they were incredible at what they were doing, but they were not the exception to the rule. The way that the movie portrayed, like, oh gosh, they're exceptional. Like there's nobody else like them. No, there were many like them, right? My father went to the historic Dunbar High School in Washington, D.C., an academic powerhouse, academic and athletic powerhouse that routinely outperformed white schools annually. My mother went to the historic Sumner High School in Kansas City, Kansas. Again, an academic powerhouse. So these were schools where, as you said earlier, Black students weren't trying to break down the doors of white schools.
Right.
If anything, as if you let my father tell, he said they should have been trying to break down the doors to get into our schools.
Amen.
The excellence they were presenting.
Yes.
So in Leslie Fenwick's book, she talks about how Black educators were and still are the most highly credentialed educators in the United States of America, far more likely to have a master's degree and a doctorate degree. But these are the type of statistics that we don't typically hear. So we were producing excellence. And when I talk about, for example, my father going to Dunbar, in terms of past teachers and students at that school, you got Carter G. Woodson, was a teacher at Dunbar High School. Anna Julia Cooper, a teacher at Dunbar High School. Dr. Charles Drew, who's responsible for blood banking, was a student at Dunbar High School. Mary Church Terrell. So the people coming through our schools and the type of excellence we were producing, this is a narrative that most of our people know nothing about. And it's something that we have to re-educate our people on. It was education for literacy. Literacy for freedom and freedom for literacy. You got to go to school so that you can advocate on behalf of your people, so that you can be an asset to your people rather than a liability. That was the ethos, that was the philosophy in the Black community, such that even those that weren't educated could produce children and inspire them and guide them to become educated and take advantage of what was out there. So I just wanted to add that historical context to the conversation.
That's critical. I mean, you're right. We do not hear that narrative before Brown. In fact, even, I'm watching, now, I think, we can give ourselves some credit. We were one of the first organizations to even put out in the atmosphere that we're going to host an event to really talk about this and unpack this with the explicit intentions to bring these things that we don't hear enough about to the general public. You know what I mean? Because the stories now, sadly, a lot of the teachers unions, would put out these kind of narratives where, Black people don't care about education. These Black parents, they don't care. They don't care. They don't even like education. I mean, and you've had so many people like ingest that, even other Black people who actually believe that. And I'm like, that is not who we are. Like, that's not our sojourn. That's actually completely opposite. And I always tell people, you wouldn't even have public schools in this country if it wasn't for Black people. The government got that idea from us, the same way they took WIC from us in the Black Panther Party. So, I'm glad. Thank you, really for bringing that important perspective. It seems then now, right, and Dr. Morrison and others, Popcorn, if that was what we were doing prior to Brown, right? Well, what the hell happened? Because that's not the case now.
Yeah. So what your question is begging is, how do we judge Brown, right? How do we judge Brown? And Dr. Akua is what he's describing in my research is the whole idea of cultural capital, right? Education was a source of cultural capital, and to have education meant you had cultural capital. And education was something that was very valuable and very important because it gave you that freedom. And if you were educated, you could help other people get it. So teachers were very highly favored in our community because we were the means to be free. You got free by getting to a teacher. That's how you gained your freedom. What Brown did, if the purpose of Brown was to achieve, was to bring about desegregation so that we could move to achievement, then it's a failure because that has not happened. And a big part of why that hasn't happened is, again, back to what Dr. Akua is saying, is that what we lost from Brown, we gained access to the things, we gained access to the resources, but what we lost was the cultural capital. We lost those teachers who were naturally culturally responsive pedagogues, who were naturally teaching our children, you are and you must be the best. That this sense of excellence was a common thing, that this is what we all must strive for, not because we need to prove it to white folks, but so that we could be free. And what happened with Brown, even in the argument, it turned it around to make it seem that the purpose of our education, the way for for us to move forward, was to be adjacent to white folks. If you could go and be with the white people, then you could get the education you needed to do what? Not to create a shared identity and a shared purpose to free your people, but so that you can go and get the bag, so that you could go and work in their institutions and build up their culture and build up their communities, and leave yours, take care of you and your people, which is fine, which we should do. But prior to that, in the pre-Brown, what our teachers were teaching was a shared identity and a shared purpose. And that shared identity was a Black identity, and the shared purpose was to uplift the community and uplift everybody. And I have this theory that the further we move away as a people from our African-centered roots of ideologies of communalism, our ideologies that ground us and root us in spiritualism, and the more we move to this Western ideology of chasing the bag and materialism, the further we move away from who we really are, the worse off we become. And it plays out in the school in the school systems. And what we see happening from my vantage point, from my 39 years of working in public education, in K to 12, K to 16 communities, what I've seen is when our teachers are not that we're not focused on education, but we're focused on education to get the bag. And we don't see school as a means to being able to get us to access the bag. If we were looking at education to be empowered to be free, then our children would be coming to school with a different mindset and a different attitude. They wouldn't come with rolled up paper in their back pocket and saying, I got my notebook. They would be coming with books and say, hey, man, I got to get this because I know if I learn and I understand this, I'm ready to make this move so that my people can go here and we can do this and I can be free and my other people can do this and we can make these plans happen. But we have moved from the purpose of education of being freedom and being collective uplift to I got to get my bag. And that's why, and again, we have moved away from our African-centered purpose of spirit and communal growth and development. And we're moving more towards this Western ideology of I got to get mine. It's all about me. And I got to get as much stuff as I can. And the measure of success is how much stuff I got, how big my bag is, and what fancy clothes I got, and what jazzy car I'm driving, and what bling bling I got, and all of this. There's ain't no wrong with nice things. I like nice things. I like to drive a nice car. I like to have decent clothes. I like all of that. But that's not the purpose.
Right.
The purpose is much greater. But so we've had this shift. We've moved. Our cultural capital has moved away from being education and teachers and education for freedom, but it is shifted to education for me, self, money in the bag. And that's why, I lift up what the Sister Dr. Barfield is doing with bringing around how did you describe it? The reawakening the cultural, how'd you put it?
Restoration.
Yeah, the cultural identity restoration practices. That's what I try to get through in my African American history classes all the time. We got to start with who we are. What is our identity? Who are we really as a people? And connect to that and help this young people understand who they really are.
Yes. Thank you. No, I mean, I think sadly that is one of the hugest things that we lost. Dr. Barfield, I see you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I would question after that. And that, I've been blessed to see what cultural identity restoration practices can do for our young people. I'm so proud, just this past weekend, I've had 7 Black students graduate from college with not just one degree. Some of them went in and got 2 degrees, and I'm proud to say they're going to be our future lawyers, our future Supreme Court judges, social workers, because they realize of the systems that have been in place to disenfranchise us and to break our children. They're like, I have to break the cycle. But it's because they learned and they engaged the idea that there's something greater in me that I owe to my culture, right? Just like Dr. Morrison was just saying, it's not just about the bag anymore. Yeah, I can get the bag, but I got to make sure that when I'm getting the bag, I'm taking care of someone else and I'm bringing someone else with me, right? A lot of the work that I do centers around the principle of Ujima from Kwanzaa, right? It's collective work and responsibility that will get this generation through. And that's what I press up on these young people. I was like, first of all, y'all got to come together. I reside in Central California, probably the hotbed for the KKK. And I know people in the South will, that ain't true, but let me tell you, they up in these hills up here. So, and our kids are more afraid to come together and be the Black excellence that they are. They would rather be apart. And what I do in my work is I bring them together. So I bring together 5 different school districts of Black kids who have been programmed to believe that because of where they live, it sets their superiority on an educational tier, right? So if you're on one side of our county, you're in the good school district and y'all good, right? And if you're on the other side of the tracks, you're in the bad district, you with the porch. I brought all those kids together, Sister Zakiya, and let me tell you, they walked into the space and looked at each other and frowned at each other. Like, why am I here with them? At the end of the process, you couldn't separate them because they began to realize that we all have the same culture. We're the same people. And we've been deprogrammed to believe and to promote our culture and our brilliance. And now these children, matter of fact, and I'll close with this. Last night, I went to a program in Fresno Unified School District. Fresno Unified is the 3rd largest school district in the state of California. And they started a program called HBCU Step Up. So they partnered, went into partnership with Benedict College in South Carolina to start a dual enrollment program with an HBCU and a school in California. Last night, 58 Black children are graduating with college credit from an HBCU. They earned 313 college credits. Their average GPA was 3.06, which was a 22% increase from the time they started the program. And they all passed their English class. And that's where they tell us our kids struggle. They can't read, they can't write, they can't understand. 58 of them babies said, no, we got this. It's just how you present it to me, how I see myself.
What was the gender breakdown?
That was, I'm going to be honest with you, just looking at this space, it was almost 50-50.
Good.
It was probably 60-40. And those young kids, let me tell you, those young people were like, I'm proud to say I'm going to Tuskegee. I'm proud to say I'm going to Benedict. I'm proud to say I'm going to Clark Atlanta, Spelman, Morehouse, Tennessee. It didn't matter because, and they all said, it was different to be in space with my own, but it elevated me and gave me a confidence I never knew I had. So that's why when I say Brown, bringing this up now, it's like these kids are getting it. We have to do more to ensure that they continue to move. But Dr. Morrison, let me tell you, they're getting it. That bag is important, yes, but they also understand there's more work for them to do to elevate our culture and our people.
Thank you. That Mama Phil, you said you had a point you wanted to bring in.
Just real quickly, one thing that I wanted to point out that I didn't really comprehend until I was looking back at some of this, that, I went on the freedom of choice program, right, as Baba Brian talked about. So what white people did in my county, and I'm sure they did it in other counties, one, some of them closed the schools rather than have them so-called integrated. And what some of them did was build new schools. And I always saw that school as a private school, but they got state funding for it. So there was a voucher program even back to this time. Georgia is now going to a voucher program this coming school year. So they actually, if you think about how much they benefited, like they got a new school, right? They got to choose the faculty they wanted from the old school, and we got to integrate their old school. So it brings up for me what Nana before Asa Hilliard used to say. He said we were well integrated in a segregated system. And as I think about how teachers fit into that, John Henry Clark talks about growing up in his community where he had the school teacher, he had the preacher, he had the laborer, he had the postman. We had all that in our communities, and teachers were a great part of that leadership. You could always go down the street and get Miss Smith to help you out if you couldn't read, right? So we no longer have that with this loss of all these teachers, and I'm thinking more and more. I have. This means a lot to me because I'm real clear. I went in the 5th grade. So with this white teacher, Miss Jones, calling me a nigra, right? That was a new word for the N word. Yep. Calling me nigra. And you've heard some of the stories, sometimes not even calling on us. We do a program called Sankofa Math, and we have people talk about some of their math injuries. A lot of math injuries happened at that time when black teachers were when Black students were not even able to show their understanding or skill, et cetera, et cetera. I'm saying that to say I have apologized to young people from time to time for integration, for my part, even though I was well intended, because now, again, I was in 5th grade. I already had 4 years of these excellent Black teachers that I maybe didn't fully appreciate at that time. I now know that they were the best teachers. They had some straight up excellence in their teaching. I had already had that love, already had that sense of you are valuable. You have worth. You're an African person. You are smart. You are everything. Before I got to Miss Jones, a lot of our students never got that because subsequently, if you remember, now we got Head Start and we got preschool. They're having these white teachers, and I will say Black teachers too, who lost some of the old ways, of having us know that we were fine, we were just fine. And as Father Brian's talking about, sometimes concerned now about getting a paycheck. So what I know is that I survived integration. I survived it, right? And again, I'm thinking that for some of what was made by my participation, I accept full responsibility for it, became just horrible for our children coming after me. Because now, as a 4 and 5-year-old, you got a white teacher looking at you as if you are not smart, okay? You don't have value. And sometimes a Black teacher too, I won't say not wanting to, and let's face it, more and more in our school systems, it's been difficult for Black teachers to bring that old sense of you are mine and I'm here for you and you can do it and all this. I mean, from our classrooms now being videotaped, etc., teachers don't feel comfortable to do it, and now there are laws in place absolutely for them not to do that. So more and more, our children are not going to get it there to the extent, of course, that we want. And we still will continue to do our best. I want to applaud all the Black teachers throughout this whole time that have done all that they could. And some teachers have been straight up successful and some will continue to be. And more, though, it's the consciousness, right? To even know that it's necessary, that is so very much so. What's the word? It's been dwindling and dwindling. So again, with what great intent, we brought in place a system that has not served us.
And I would argue the system has actually very strategically harmed us. Specifically, I mean, we don't have enough time to really go into it today, but the introduction of resegregation immediately, damn near at the Brown was the introduction of special education. It was the introduction of gifted education. Like that didn't exist before Brown. So white folks even figured out, okay, well, we can't use race no more. Now we're going to send all the black people to special education and all the white kids are going to be in regular classrooms inside of the same building. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole nother thing we need to unpack. Mm-hmm. But I will acknowledge, that we are coming up on about 20 more minutes of time. And so we are at the Q&A portion I do see that we have 2 questions and we are going to get to that from the audience, but I did want to pivot and ask you all to do one more round robin around specific, because I hate doing these kinds of conversations and we just focus on woe is me and everything is bad. And then we don't offer the audience the bright lights of what is actually happening now, right? What are the tools and strategies that we can use and implement, right, and scale? I would argue that what Dr. Barfield is doing, right, in the state of California, and I also want to mention my colleague, Deborah Watkins as well, who's the founder of a Black Education Network. Shout out to her, who I know with you, Dr. Barfield, also co-founded, right, the Black Students United. So we know that Black folks are out there doing this work. Like we know y'all are there, and we're grateful for you all. So yes, that's my final question. And then we'll answer the 2 questions in the chat. Let's do a round robin. Where do we go from here? Right. We see what happened with Brown. This is not, unfortunately, collectively, I don't think anybody would say this was a good move when you look at us collectively and sort of where things are literally as we speak. So Dr. Akua, let's start with you. Where do we go from here, and share a few bright lights that people may not even know about that exist and how they can go and connect with those organizations? Thank you. You're on mute. There you go.
All right. I like to say that wherever we populate, we must dominate. And when I say dominate, I don't mean dominate others. We must dominate for ourselves. So wherever we are, it is our responsibility to carve and create sacred space where our students can be who they are, where our teachers can be who they are. I have the opportunity to travel to a number of urban, suburban, and rural school districts around the country. And so I've seen a lot of what's going on in our schools. And I haven't seen a finer program than what Dr. Barfield is doing with her Ujima scholars in Fresno, California. So I'll defer, a lot of my time to her. And I'm sure what Dr. Morrison is doing in DC is amazing as well. Just listening to him speak, I'd like to be
in Baltimore.
Oh, I'm sorry, Baltimore. Yeah.
DC and Baltimore. Yep.
So I defer my time to Dr. Barfield because she's on the front lines doing that work in a very powerful, meaningful way. And she's getting measurable results with that.
Can you share just really quickly about the brother Marcus Klein and his school in Chicago before we go to Dr. Barfield?
Oh, absolutely. So if you're talking about independent education, yeah, then absolutely. Then we're talking about Educational Network with Mama Fia and Bob Wakesa. What brother Marcus Klein is doing in Chicago is nothing short of amazing. I use a couple of his video clips when I'm working with my students here in the School of Education at Clark Atlanta University. And I do for my students what Baba Asa Hilliard did for me. He took us as initiates in the Jegna Collective, and he showed us videos of teachers from the Marcus Garvey Academy in LA teaching Black children calculus in the 3rd grade. Just amazing things that you wouldn't think that our children are able to do because we have been taught and told other people's theories about human growth and development. So we know Piaget, we know Maslow, that says, oh, a child should be able to do this at this grade and this at this age and so forth. Well, when Baba Asa showed us these videos of Black children, reading on high school level in the 1st grade and different things of that nature, it literally blew my mind. And at that time, I was already a teacher of the year, and I had no idea of this. Most teachers are not aware of what our children are capable of. So when I began to see the videos of what Baba Marcus Klein was doing at Freedom Home Academy in Chicago. And you should friend him on Facebook or go on to YouTube and check it out. And he will show you, 4 and 5-year-olds reading. And I don't mean just reading, cat, dog, spot, and that sort of
it's amazing.
high level, college level medical words and different things of that nature. It's absolutely amazing, and it will blow your mind in terms of what our children are capable of. So I can't say enough about the wonderful work that he's doing.
Thank you. And Dr. Barfield, if you want to hop in, since Dr. Akua teed you up there, tell us more about the amazing work that you're doing in California for our Black babies.
Well, I will say that I don't think I would be able to do this work if it wasn't for Mama Afia, Baba Wakesa, Baba Chica, Baba Tony Browder, those that reminded me and gave me permission to be my most brilliant self, and then to challenge me to continue the work in ensuring that our babies got that same message, because they were going to be the ones that had to tackle this horrible, horrible system that's been put in place for them. So thank you to them, first and foremost, publicly. I love them so much. And so to the work that I do, it was the former superintendent here in Fresno. His name is Jim Yavino. And Jim Yavino accredits a lot of who he is. He's a white Italian man, but he was raised by a Black family here because his parents passed away. And so they took him in, as we do. We always take in others, right? But they instilled in him the pride of Black people, even though he's a white Italian man, right? And he came to me one day, he says, I want you to develop something that we can begin to change the narrative for Black children so that we can decrease the number of them that are being placed in our penal system schools. Because in his role, he was responsible for the juvenile justice schools that our young people were in. And here in Fresno County, Black children only make up 8% of the population, yet they were almost 50% of the beds being used in this penal system. And he said, we got to change. And that's how Ujima came.
That's a crime, even of itself. But go ahead.
And so, I was blessed to come. I think it was because of Mama Deborah Watkins that I met Dr. Akua and so many others. And we began to formulate and cultivate this relationship of excellence, right? And it was through that the Ujima program I was able to develop it and continue the work. And now to be able to do it on a statewide level, even though my focus is the Central Valley, I'm able to touch. And so in leaving with everybody, I just want parents to understand that even though we think our children are grown, we must not leave them to do this work on their own. This system, yes, it's free, but it's not. Because if we're going to lose our babies, then it's just that's a free education I don't want. So these programs that are available to your children that are African-centered and cultured and directed and intentional, please embrace them. Because our children need to know who they are and where they come from so that they quit stepping on these landmines that are destroying them. Woo! Losing our babies. But I am proud to say that because of cultural identity restoration practices, our children are learning that the bag is not as important as we make it out to be. That knowing who I am and stepping in spaces and challenging systems is what pays the bills, because they will lose it all if we don't know, they don't know who they are. So, as far as out here, we have the Black Students of California United. We will continue to cultivate and educate. We will continue to put young people in front of, even out here in California, that everybody thinks everything is so rosy. But no, our children have gone toe to toe with Governor Newsom and just flat out told him, you're wrong.
Right.
They are learning about reparations. They are engaging the process, because I might not see it in my lifetime.
Right.
But if we do this work right out here, they will see it. And they can determine what those reparations are and what their needs are to improve the outcomes for their families and generations to come.
Amen and Ashe. Afia, please share with the audience your own work, but then also if there's other organizations out there that we would recommend to our people, please share. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, first, big ups to Mama Angie, working on the public school level, because, for me, even though I've been a part of building Aya all these years, I know that by far, right, our babies are in the public school
They
system.
are. That's where most of them are right now. Yep.
So absolutely critical, that she continues that work. And
Right.
I want to say, as far as Aya goes, we've always seen ourselves as a research and development arm. Because we can pretty much teach the way we want to teach, right? We can set our own curriculum. We can decide what needs to be, what our children need educationally. Then we can see what it does and what results we're able to get. And we've always been very generous in working to get that out to the public school system. And as all of you know here, that sometimes, as we try to push those systems to do it, we realize that they're not really interested, because the public school system is having a great success. I sadly say that because of their real aims, they are successful, and that's how they see it. So they haven't been necessarily that receptive. And still, we will do that. I also want to big up all our families for homeschooling, because there is a move in this country to homeschool. So ultimately, what I see we have to do is that we have to regain our confidence in our ability to educate our own. There's nothing short of that we need to do. We need to redecide that we can do it like we have in times past, as Dr. Morrison has told us. Like, we didn't run away from this. So I say, like Baba Chica is saying, like, dominate wherever we are. So if we're in a church, then get some education going in the basement of that church or in some kind of room. Get a summer program going. Get after school going. Anything to educate and teach. Teach while we're in our cars. Teach a child to read. Like, it's time for all of us to be teachers. We don't have to be formally taught. If a child needs to be educated, then it's time, because it's critical. It's critical that our children have some academic foundation, and also culturally. It's important for them to know who they are and whose they are. And for me, I'm feeling very critical. So again, salute to all of us who are making it happen, doing our best. And I actually think our people are ready, more and more ready. People really are ready
They are.
to step up to this more and more. So I'm just very, very proud that Aya can say what we've done. And
And
our
continue to.
children are absolutely brilliant. And unfortunately, the main thing they need from us is love. The main thing they need is love. The main thing they need from us is to have us say that we see them, we love them, they are ours, and we have work for them to do. And most students respond so well to that. So for me, the formula: high expectations. And that's where the Marcus Klein School comes in so critically. For me, it was a Marcus Klein School. As Baba Chica said, I saw a 5-year-old say a multiplication table, and it's like, okay, let's go, right? Keep the high expectations and keep the high nurturance. 99% of our children are going to do all of what we want them to do really pretty quickly. And thank you, Mama Zakia. Been great to be here.
100%. Dr. Morrison, I want to give you an opportunity to share any bright lights that you can share with the audience in terms of how Black people are responding and are continuing our historic tradition of looking for ways in which we can provide our children and families with the world-class education that they need and deserve. And then we'll get to our 2 questions from the comments. Thank you.
First off, I want to lift up everything that everyone has been saying, and all the work that you fine brothers and sisters are doing. And that is what we need. I've been working in public education for 39 years, and I know it's not our answer. It's never been designed to be the answer for us. With my own children, I saw a public school, because I couldn't afford a private school or a parochial school. I saw a public school as a assistance for me to educate my children, because my children's education is my responsibility. It's not the responsibility of those people that I send them to every day. They help me. They assist me in making sure that my children learn and understand and develop a worldview that's relevant to who they are, so that they can be successful with themselves in our community. With that being said, as Mama Thea said earlier, the majority of our kids are in public schools. They're just like me. People can't afford to send their kids to private schools or whatever, so they're in public schools. So we have to continue to push and demand excellence within our public schools wherever we may be, and make sure that we're doing whatever we can to get the best for our children and our communities in those schools. As Dr. Akua said, wherever we are, we have to dominate, whether it's in a public school space, a parochial school, a community, wherever we are. We have to make sure that we are demanding. As Douglas said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. Now, with that being said, the work that you guys are doing is exactly what we need to be doing, and what we're doing is what's necessary for the moment. We have to create educational opportunities at every level, wherever we can. If it's a pop-up on the corner with you and a couple of brothers and sisters just chatting it up, if you have a homeschool collective, if you're doing what Sister Dr. Barfield is doing, whatever it is, we have to create as many educational opportunities as we can that will provide our children with the tools that they need to be empowered to truly be free, so that they can reach the highest level of their human development that they are capable of. That is truly what African-centered education is about, is providing our youth with those tools to reach that highest level, because if they reach that highest level, they're going to bring everybody else along with them. It's going to make a more beautiful world and a more beautiful community and a more beautiful family. And it's going to make more beauty in the world. And that's what Black people do. That's what that's our ethos. It's who we are as a people. When we ain't doing that, we feeling bad. But in any case, so specifically, the William J. Watkins Senior Educational Institute, in partnership with All This Math, and shameless plug, he's my son. We have Akil Parker. The brother is a math. He's looking for math disciples everywhere. He believes freedom is through math.
Good job, Dad.
You know, so we've partnered with him. We have a summer hystomatics program in Baltimore, and we're taking our registration for that opportunity now. Also, another brother and sister in Baltimore are doing great work, and you can see them in the chat, is the Ryan Institute. They're doing tremendous work and doing just what we're saying, providing whatever kind of educational needs that are out there that are necessary, that people that we can bring our families to really empower our children and to free them. The other piece is we also have this summer, we have a partnership with the Baltimore chapter of the African American Historical and Genealogical Society, where we are teaching young people how to do genealogical research and local research, so that they can know and understand themselves and know that they come from something much bigger than just their hood, and that they're connected to a much greater community and a much larger community, and that they understand that the people down the street from them came from the same communities their families came from when they migrated from South Carolina or North Carolina or Virginia, wherever they came from. So don't shoot that brother. He's your cousin. Don't do that. So we've got a couple of those programs going, and a real big push that we have is we do culturally responsive pedagogy training for teachers. We provide teachers with MSD CPUs so that they can get their certification renewed.
MSD is MSD.
Maryland State Department of Education.
There we go. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, so right, we all over. So but anybody can take the training, and we've been doing that now for almost 10 years. So that culturally responsive pedagogy is what our teachers were doing back in the 1800s. They were taking the lived experiences of our youth and using that to connect whatever the curriculum is, so that they can understand it from their perspective and see it through their eyes and who they are. And then it's not, oh, I got to remember this stuff, but this becomes a part of me, and I understand it because it's connected to me, and now I can see it through my own lens. And we train teachers with the skills and the tools that they need to be able to take whatever it is they're teaching and make that connection. So those are some of the things that we have going on locally, and I hate it when I get on these radio talk shows and hear people saying on these talk shows that Black people ain't doing nothing. We out here, brothers and sisters out here grinding every single day, every day, 24/7.
You
Been
better
on it for decades, for
Decades.
centuries, ever since we got here. We've been grinding, even before. But
That's right.
So I hate it when people say, "Oh, Black people ain't doing nothing." No,
This
you ain't doing
I
nothing.
mean-
Black people doing. You need to get down with the brothers and sisters that's doing the work.
Right.
Stop talking about Black people ain't doing nothing, because we out here doing it every day.
Yes.
So on that note, let's just keep it pushing. Let's keep
That's
it
right. 100%. Well, that's why I said I was not going to walk away from this conversation and everyone listening to us not have something tangible, right? That they can literally put their hands on or go to a website to learn more and dig deeper. Because here's the issue. Not only are Black people are doing something, like you said, Dr. Morrison, we are all over the country, but we could do a better job of not being so much in our silos and sort of scaling the things that we already know work. For example, the Marcus Klein School, why we ain't got one in every state? Just start off, just one, and then we can expand. This brother has showed us the last 20 years that Black children are brilliant. These are the same children, because keep in mind, he's in Chicago. I want people to know that. Okay, Marva Collins, another sister out of Chicago who left the public school system because of the bureaucracy and just the fact that there was a bunch of teachers who just did not even see the humanity of little Black children to even love them enough to think they could learn and to teach them. So I want people to know these names, know these organizations, and have the tools and the language to push back on pathologizing Black people all the time. And so I just thank you all, I feel like this has been a very fruitful and needed conversation. We have had consistent viewers, as you all can see, and then the people have actually been very engaged in the comments. So with that, we promised our audience that we would take questions and for them to leave those questions in the chat. This is our first question. And so I'll go ahead and read it. It says, since Black people have always influenced our society in entertainment, culture, music, science, etc., what if we to return to what Dr. Morrison is expressing, then just maybe we will not only support our people, but the last hope for influence in this nation. Wow. That's a heavy question. Dr. Morrison, you want to take a stab at it since they referenced you?
I just said a lot of things. I'm not quite sure. If I understand the correct question correctly, it's about how do we leverage entertainment to communicate as a means of communication or a tool to communicate and to empower our people.
Yeah.
I'll take a stab at it.
Yeah.
I'll take a stab at it this way. My oldest son, he said once when he was real little that we went over to a friend of mine's house and his son was my friend's stepson was telling him all about all these rappers, and he didn't know anything about them. And I'm a jazz guy. I like to listen to jazz. I like some R&B too, but my kids will say, you listen to too much jazz, it's making my stomach hurt when I be driving home from school. But I look at it this way, right? If we look at rap music, right? We got, for me, and this is how I explained to my kids when they were younger, we got two types. We got real art and we got crap rap.
Yeah.
Right? We got out here now, we got these YouTube videos that are encouraging young brothers and sisters to go out here and engage in this tribalism and killing each other. And it's being promoted.
Yeah.
It's got really nice music, great graphics. The videography is fantastic. That's crap rap. And then we got folks out here who are making some serious, who are doing serious work, who are encouraging our people to do the right thing and to move forward. If that's where the question was going, if it is, then yes, much more of that needs to be done. One of the things that has enhanced my ability to teach is marrying the arts to the history. right now, we in my African American history class, we're doing a project based on the theme for Black History Month this year: African Americans in the arts. So every student has picked a subject. We did a whole piece on learning about different kinds of history of African American music. Looked at poetry and literature. Looked at some three-dimensional art. Looked at a variety of some dance, and kids picked their topic, developed a research question, did their research, came up with a thesis, wrote an essay, created a individual multimedia project, and now in the process of beginning to present them. So if we're looking at that and they got to answer the question: how did this subject connect to or improve African American, contribute to African Americans arts and culture, culture and history? So that's the kind of work that which we're working on, and I'm doing to try to use that culture to uplift and to empower our young people, because some of them they've been teaching me things about folks I never knew about, some artists that they coming up with, and some of the works that they're doing, and I'm like, okay, cool.
That intergenerational connection, I love that. Thank you. I think that, I hope that answers Rhonda's question. If you're still watching, Rhonda, you can let us know in the chat. But Baba Wakesa here also posed what I believe is a very, very important question here, kind of affirming Angie. I forget what she was rolling on at that time, but he says our children are more afraid now to come together and to identify as Black and with African liberation cause, right? And so what are additional educational options for parents and the Black community to address this fear? That's a great question. Yeah.
I would say, I know my focus is on the kids, but there is a reach back happening out here with some of my colleagues where we are really trying to engage our parents to understand the systems that their children are in, to start understanding all the different acronyms and things like that, because I can speak to where I am right now. A lot of our parents are afraid of losing what they have. There's been this instilled fear that if you stand up for yourself, you're going to lose. And so, it's unfortunate, but that is in some cases, in some spaces, that's the time that we live in. So, I would encourage, it used to be the church, to be honest with you, and I'm not tearing down the church, but it used to be the church is where we went to get that education, to get that knowledge. And it's different now, but there has to be this go back. And I think, Zakiya, you just said it, the intergenerational bond, because there has been an intergenerational breakup where the young kids don't feel they need to listen to the elders. And that is really causing this issue. And unfortunately, a lot of my sisters that are my age, they got kids, grandkids, and in some cases, great grandkids. So there's all these dynamics. So I think if we can get back to how it used to be, where we respected our elders and listened and sat at the feet of our elders and learned, that, those are the things I think will drive this uprising of our communities and our people, and our children will begin to respect the knowledge and identify the cultural capital in it, so that the family moves together and it's not just the kids. Because I think that's where we're at.
That's right. Yeah, I think people are now calling it the 2-gen model or whatever. But I know that we also, as a people, have a history of just working together. Like, we did not create patriarchy. So I appreciate that Dr. Akua, made sure that folks knew that, even in the Nile Valley on the continent of Africa prior to colonization, Black folks wanted boys and girls, men and women, to be educated, and saw the value in humanity in who we are as a people, regardless of gender. So I think that, again, this conversation literally could be a 3-day conference, just to be honest with you. And you all know that, in order to really do a great job of fully unpacking, just because it's 70 years, right? We literally got 70 years of evidence of not only, I guess the lack of what we thought Brown was supposed to do. Not only did it, I believe, overall, right, produce the opposite, but in some ways, right, particularly as we lost an economic base in our community in terms of Black teachers and principals to the tune of, what was that, Dr. Akua? $1 billion?
100,000.
Yeah, come off of mute. But like, that's real, y'all. Like
Yes, over 1 billion.
Yeah, and so that's the piece we don't talk about enough. Like when we have these real conversations about Brown, that's important. And so I hope that we were able to provide balance today for this audience. I know for a fact, just based on the comments, people learned a lot, right? I learned, just here, listening to you all, unpack these things. But thank you for answering those questions, right? Like I said, the chat has been very much involved and listened, and I will just allow you all just finally to share, one or two last words, and also let people know where they can find you. What is your social media so people can connect with you and see if they can offer support and help scale some of these things that you all are involved in. Dr. Akua, can you jump us off? Thank you.
Sure. So our contribution to helping our children to understand who they are and improve their academic skills at the same time is Reading Revolution online. And for parents who are listening, you can go to readingrevolution.org. Again, that's readingrevolution.org. This is a literacy and history program. And what it is it's a collection of 90 reading selections. And each of those brief reading selections are about a Black hero or shero. Much of the information you will not find in standard public school curricula or private school curricula. So 90 brief bios of these Black heroes and sheroes, plus a captioned video to go with each, because we know that our children are very much visual learners. And then 10 comprehension questions for each of the selections, grammar, writing, and vocabulary activities to go with each. This is being used in a number of public schools and school districts, but we also like to go directly to parents who know that their children need this and are not getting this. So again, that's readingrevolution.org. You can go there for a free demo.
Excellent. Next, Dr. Morrison. You off mute.
I just wanted to close with a thank you and an appreciation for the opportunity to share my thoughts and ideas. I can be reached, or we can be reached at watkinseducation.org. That's our website. Just look for Watkins Education on all the social medias. We have a Facebook page, Twitter account, LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, but that's how you can reach us, and that's how our communications generally go out through our website and through the Facebook page. We do our culturally responsive pedagogy trainings in the fall and in the spring. Mm-hmm. They are in person. It's an in-person thing. You gotta be there.
Right.
And what's unique about our training is that most trainings will provide you with methodologies. They'll provide you with strategies. They'll provide you with resources and materials. But what they lack in is showing you how to assess whether or not what you're doing is effective. Right. And that's the piece that we add. We have a specific tool that we use and teach, and the workshops are run as professional learning communities where we teach the strategies. Folks go into the classroom, they practice them, they bring them back, we analyze them, and then we run through our tool to measure to see how successful they were. And this is a training that culturally responsive pedagogy is not something that you just get overnight.
Right.
It's practice that you continue to practice throughout your career. It's because as teachers, we're practitioners. We never get to a point where, okay, I know everything there is about teaching. No, you're learning every day something new, something different. So the training is good for people who've been in practice for 20 years, 30 years. It's good for people who are pre-service teachers, haven't even started. So that we have, and you can also in the chat, you can find the link for our summer hystomatics program, and we're partnering with Elevate for our genealogy program. So we've got our group of students set up for that. But those are the things that are right at us right now, that we have going right now. But watkinseducation.org, that'll get you where we are.
Yep. We got the website on there for, I believe that's one of your children, Sister Hanifa. That's one of your children, right, Dr. Morrison?
Yeah, she's our grant writer.
Okay.
She gets money.
Love it. I love it. Hi, Hanifa. Okay, Mama Afia.
All right. So, yep, we're Aya Educational Institute. We do have a full-day school. And y'all can find us at ayaed.com, AYAED.com. Mama, so if you'll put that in. And there's also a link in the chat for our Aya WHB Family Network. You can get connected up with us there for all of what's going on. So, yeah, we have that full-day school. And for about 23 years now, we've been teaching our full-day curriculum online, which means we've been able to connect really globally more and more. A lot of our faculty is now international. I saw somebody talk about 200 million of us speak Kiswahili. We have Sewanoga who lives in Johannesburg teaching both isiZulu for us and also Kiswahili for the 4th year now. And some of y'all know that we're also building in Tanzania. So we're expecting to take the whole school there in 2025. And Baba Brian, we actually have Baba Akil as our newest math faculty too. We're very happy for that. And I want to say, in not doing a brick and mortar, we've financially been smart. We don't have to put the money into the building, which is what has caused a lot of our school closures because it's just so expensive. We've been able to put more money into teacher development and teachers. And I want to shout out to our teachers. I think they're the best on the planet. So yeah. And we can do full-time for parents. We also can do a la carte. They can take a course here, a course there with us. They can be part-time down to one course. Also want to shout out our WHB, Warrior Healer Builder model. So critical for us. We always say that when our students come to school, the whole family comes to school because our parents have to sign up for that training. The same public school system that is failing our children have failed their parents. And we're very, 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 very clear about that. So we have some weekend retreats going on now throughout the country. Atlanta coming up, Chicago. We've just done Baltimore. We're going to get out to the West Coast, Mama Angie, twice this year. So we're excited about that. We're also going to do a 3-day retreat in Ghana. So for those of you who want to jump on that wagon, please do. Just super excited and glad to be here, Mama Kia. Thank you so much.
Yes. And let's go. Dr. Angie, final comments. Where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you. I am on IG, Angie Barfield, on all platforms and LinkedIn. Follow the Black Students of California United. It's at Black Students CU. Shout out to the staff of Black Students CU and the work that they're doing and the work that we're also doing. I do want to say Warrior Healer Builders is probably the best experience. If you have never tapped into your inner soul to find your Black, to be proud of who you are, you got to engage Warrior Healer Builders. I'm sorry. I
highly recommend it. I have recommended them to so many Black organizations. I'm telling you, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
That Baba Wakesa and Mama Afia, did a youth component of that through Black Students of California United years ago during COVID, actually. And so, anybody. My work is meant to impact our community as a whole, not just in California. I love working with Black educators. I love working with Black students. So just know that BSCU was designed to cultivate and educate students, but we're doing the work now to educate our advisors, our faculty, our teachers, because they're under attack too.
Right.
Their Blackness is under attack too. So we are continually looking for funding to do this work because we are a grassroots organization, and we are grateful to the funders we've had. But just know Black Students of California United are out here doing the work, and we are trying to build the front line of Black youth to continue to do the work to uplift our community. So thank you to the Wayfinder Foundation for this opportunity. I'm so grateful, and I look forward to the next conversation we have to uplift our people and our children. And yes, as Baba Wakesa said, it is not their fault that they are the way they are. They have been manipulated to believe that that's who they are. So that's why we all, as parents in the community, have to do work to make sure that they're whole again. So thank you. Had a great time.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. This was, to me, I'm going to say y'all the best expert panel that's talking about this particular situation. And I certainly take the privilege in saying that, because I know for a fact, again, this has been one of the most engaged conversations online that I've had in several years, to be honest with you. And people are deeply engaged. And to me, it just goes to show you, we love our people. We love our children. We want the tools to be successful, right? Like, we want support. So with that, right, and in that vein, anybody that's listening right now, there are several organizations that you literally could financially support in this video right now. All of the organizations that have been listed here, Wayfinder Foundation, check us out. Go to our website, learn more about what we do. Particularly Black women leading the charge in communities for education and criminal justice. Wayfinder Foundation certainly is one of the best national organizations that's centering these type of issues. Dr. Angie, right? Black Students United of California, we have shared their website in the chat. Go on there and make a contribution. Like, we all can do something, right? Like, those of you who are listening today, right? And I didn't even plan to even say this, but I just think that it's critical, because as you said, Dr. Andrew, we have to raise funds to even be able to do this work in our community. And so Black folks, right, just regular everyday Black folks, we can commit to do our small part. You can become a sustainer of the work. Give the organizations $5 or $10 a month. You don't even miss it, right? Like, that's how we build, right, the kind of infrastructure that we know that we need to continue this fight for education and racial justice, particularly for Black people. So again, Wayfinder Foundation, Aya Educational Institute, Dr. Akua, please reach out to him. He is not just a professor at Clark, but he is also very much a consultant. We were able to get Montgomery County Public Schools to hire him. Montgomery County Public Schools is the 14th largest district in the entire country, and the largest here in the state of Maryland. And he just provided an over-the-top 2-day experience training for the teachers here. Black students make up 20% of the population for Montgomery County Public Schools, yet on all of the negative indicators, they're leading. And so that is not okay for us as an organization with Racial Justice Now. And so we work to make sure that we bring in the experts. We let these people in these institutions know we have experts that y'all can hire. You need to spend the money with the people that can tell you how to reach Black children, period. And so that is how we do our work. So again, thank you all so much. I'm honored again to have this conversation. I'm glad that people stayed on with us, even though we're completely over our time. But that just lets you know how much we are, like I said, how much we love our people, right? And how much, we want to give. So again, please, family, make a contribution. Wayfinder Foundation, Black Students United, right? Hire Dr. Cool, and also please go and support Mama Afia and Wakesa. I have recommended their Warrior Healer Builder piece to Black organizations all around this country because it will completely transform how you run your organization. I'm telling you, if you are Black, you need this training. And it don't matter what you hear them, we're global. It's not just about Black Americans. This is about African people in the diaspora, all of us. Please reach out to Mama Afia and Baba Wakesa. You won't regret it. The resources that you will spend for that training is going to be well worth it, period. That's it. That's what I want to share. And thanks again to the audience. And we'll see you all soon. Make sure y'all like and subscribe Wayfinder and Racial Justice Now. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace.
Bye.